Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2023 Kia Telluride. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed, and the great part is it's a hidden cross tube, which means all that's going to be visible is the business end here of the hitch. And this is going to be a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, which is awesome. You have plenty of different applications as far as ball mounts, bike racks, cargo carriers. This is the most common size. Now when getting those accessories in place, you are going to need to get a 5/8 pin and clip. Now, a lot of your accessories will come with one, but either way, this is required to kind of keep those in place. And if you want to pick up a locking version, that way you can leave your accessories on here locked in place. We have a bunch of those available here at eTrailer as well. You also have a nice open safety chain loop here, so that's going to be easy to hook up your trailer safety chains, whether it's the standard S style or even a larger clevis style with no problem. Now, speaking of towing, this is rated pretty well. You have a gross trailer weight rating, which is going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded up at 5,000 pounds. You also have a tongue weight rating, which is going to be that downward pressure that's put here on the inside of the receiver tube opening. It's going to be your suspended accessories like your cargo carriers or bike racks. That's going to be 750 pounds. So that's a really good tongue weight. You should be able to load up a 4-bike rack with all the bikes and not overload that. Now this can be used with a weight distribution hitch, and it's going to bump your gross trailer weight rating up to 6,000 pounds. So you get that little extra 1,000-pound capacity, but the tongue weight's going to stay the same at 750. Now before hooking up and towing, you do want to check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's rated at, compare that with the numbers on the hitch, and then take the lower of those two numbers, and that way you stay safe. Now in choosing accessories, you want to make sure that they're going to work, especially ones that are folding. You don't want to make contact with your rear fascia. So from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point of the rear fascia, it's 3 inches. So you should be pretty good with most folding accessories. This is also helpful when picking out a ball mount for your trailer to make sure that you have clearance. And going along with that, you're also going to want to determine if you need a rise or drop. So from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're looking at 16 inches. Now that's a decent amount of ground clearance, but just keep in mind when you have suspended accessories loaded up, as you go up an incline, those are going to want to tilt towards the ground. So if you're going up a steep incline, just keep that in mind. Now, as far as installation goes, this one's not too terribly bad. You do have some weld nuts as well as some bolts that you'll pass through the frame. The holes are already there, so there's no drilling required. Now, you are going to have to lower down your exhaust to be able to gain access to those, and there is a little bit of trimming just to make clearance for the hitch. But overall, this one's pretty simple, and I'm going to walk you through the installation so you can get your hitch installed. So let's take a look at that. To begin our installation, we're going to want to lower down our spare tire, and that's going to give us the space to be able to put our hitch up. And if you've never had to lower your spare tire on your Telluride, it's pretty easy. In the back hatch here, you're just going to pull your cargo cover up, and you're going to see this plastic cover. It says spare tire. Just pry this open real quick. And we have this bolt. To lower this down, you can use your spare tire tools. They're going to be located in this cabinet, so just pry this up, and in this nice little bag that they have all the tools, you're going to want to grab this wrench, and that's going to allow us to spin this and lower the tire down. Now we'll go ahead and set our spare aside. Next, on our driver's side, we have this panel underneath that we're going to need to remove. Now there's going to be 3 plastic push pins, and those are pretty easy to get. There's 4 little slots here, so you can use a flathead screwdriver. I have a trim panel tool that makes it pretty easy. Just pop that center part out, and these should pull out fairly easily. Now there's also 2 plastic nuts, and those are going to be located in these kind of corrugations here in this opening. Now they come down by hand pretty easy. You can kind of spin them and just kind of put pressure on them, or you can use a 14mm socket, either way, but it's pretty easy to get these to pop off. So now we'll set this aside. Now we are going to need to lower down our muffler, and because our hitch is going to bolt into the frame rail above it, this is going to give us more space. And if you're doing this at home, in your garage, or on a driveway, something along those lines, just make sure you have something to support the exhaust once we take it off the isolators. That way it's not bending and kind of supporting the weight downstream. Now there's 3 isolators that we're going to pry off here. First one, pretty easy. And with all of them, to make it a little bit easier, if you need to, you can put a little bit of silicone, you can use a penetrating oil, or even just a soapy water solution to kind of make this easier. And with a pry bar or even a long flathead, just use the muffler as leverage to pop this one off. There's also one tucked back here, so we'll get this one popped off as well. Now, since I'm on a lift, I'm using a strap to just kind of create a cradle here, just a cam buckle to go between 2 points of suspension to create that support for our exhaust. And this is going to be the last one right here by the differential, and we'll get this one popped off as well. And also, it doesn't really matter if it's the top or the bottom one. Whichever one is easier for you to pry off is going to be the best one to do. So let's see if we can get this one off here. And that gives us that clearance to be able to get to our frame rail. Now our next step is going to be to trim out the bottom portion here on our fascia, and that's going to allow for the hitch to sit up into the spot. Now, something I found in the instruction manuals is I measured it on the way that they wanted me to, and I realized it wasn't exactly centered up. So what I ended up doing, and what you might want to do, is just have someone kind of mock up the hitch. It's got the side plates that kind of go into the side of the frame. So once that's up in place, just go ahead and make some marks right here. And then we'll measure back. It says 3 1/8. I'm going to go about 3 inches, and that way we can always trim up a little bit more if we need to, but you don't want to go excessive. But again, the instruction manual, it is kind of slightly skewed, so I would suggest just mocking yours up. That way you know for sure that it's going to work. Now, as far as cutting, I'm using an oscillating tool or a multi-tool. You can use a Dremel, you can use a pair of snips. Any kind of cutting that utensil you may have to get through this, just go ahead and start trimming this out. Now we'll just take a file. You can even take the flat part of a knife blade and just kind of run it along here to get some of those burrs taken off. Now I'm here with my buddy Chris, and we're going to get this up in place. Now have your hardware ready. We're going to take the long bolts and we're going to put our conical tooth washers in place. And the metal washer here, it's got these little teeth, and that's going to bite in, and we're going to be passing it through the side of the frame. Now on this passenger side, there is a heat shield, so you might have to kind of force this past it. But we'll go ahead, lift this up, and get these in place. Now this heat shield does kind of give us a little bit of issues as far as clearance to get this bolt in. So you may kind of have to push on that. There we go. And once we get one started on each side, it's going to support the hitch and make it a lot easier to get the rest of the hardware up. So go ahead, get one in on both sides of the vehicle. And just a little tip to make it a little easier for you is have the washer kind of already slid down towards the hole. Because it's a larger diameter than the bolt head, this will help kind of make a little bit of clearance for you. And you may have to kind of lift the hitch a little bit here and there and move it around, but we'll get this passed in and get all of our side bolts in place. And once we have our side bolts in place, we'll go ahead with our bolts here, and they're going to thread into the weld nuts. So again, we're going to be using our conical tooth washers. And you may need to kind of shift the hitch kind of front or back to kind of get this to align, but once you have that lined up, it should thread in there pretty easily. Now, if you are having trouble getting this to thread, you might want to clean out the inside weld nuts. Sometimes corrosion can build up in them, and it can make it kind of tricky to get these in place. So I recommend you can put a little bit of penetrating oil in there. And we have a tube brush here. That's a good way to kind of clean those out and make sure that there's no rust or buildup in there. With our bottom bolts in place, we'll go ahead and put our conical tooth washers here on the bolts that went horizontally through the frame rail, and then follow them up with the nuts. Now, you don't want to tighten these down too much, because what we're going to do when we tighten this is do the bottom ones first, and that's going to cinch it up towards the frame, and then we can tighten these side ones. So now we'll go through and tighten up our bottom bolts with a 17mm socket. Now to tighten up our horizontal bolts here, I am going to put a wrench on the head of the bolt, and that way it's not spinning. And then we'll take our 19mm and tighten these down. Now with everything kind of tightened in place, we're going to come back with our torque wrench. And the torque settings are found in the instruction manual. Now they do have different torque settings for the smaller bottom bolts versus the horizontal ones, so just make sure you adjust accordingly. And if you need a torque wrench, we have them available here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. But that's going to make sure that we have these tight enough, but also not too tight, causing stress on the threads. So go through, torque these all down properly. All that's left to do is get our exhaust hangers put back in and take off our whatever we use to support the exhaust, and then get our spare tire up and then start using our hitch. Also, don't forget to put your plastic panel and your push pins back into place as well. And that was a look and installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2023 Kia Telluride.